students, this is Hasna and today we are going to start with the chapter The Lost Child, written by Mulk Raj Anand. Now this chapter is basically about a small child who gets lost in a fair. Now what are the incidents that follows once he gets lost in the fair is actually narrated in the story. Okay, now let us try to find out a little more about this child. Now in the very introductory lines, that is these lines written in red, it's written, a child goes to a fair with his parents. He is happy and excited and wants the sweets and toys displayed there, but his parents don't buy them for him. Why then does he refuse when someone else offers them to him? Now this child, he goes to the fair with his parents, and obviously like any other child, he is very happy, excited and wants to buy almost everything that he sees. And like every other parent, his parents too don't agree to buy him everything. Now why is it so that when he is offered all of these things which his parents did not buy for him, when he is offered those same things by a stranger, why does he refuse? Because earlier when he was with his parents, he wanted all those things. So what happens that when he was offered the same things by a stranger, why does he refuse to take them? Okay, so let's know a little more about this. So the story begins. It was the festival of spring. From the wintry shades of narrow lanes and alleys emerged a gaily clad humanity. Some walked, some rode on horses, others sat, being carried in bamboo and bullock carts. One little boy ran between his father's legs, brimming over with life and laughter. So there are some new words that you see here. This wintry shades of narrow lanes, basically it means in winter season the narrow lanes are full of shades. Clear? Then we have another word called as emerged. Emerged actually means come out. That means when it was actually the season of spring, and from the narrow lanes which were shaded came out this gaily clad humanity. That means very happy, many happy people were coming out. Some were walking, some were riding horses, others were using carts. Okay, now among this whole group of people, there was this little boy who ran between his father's legs, brimming over with life and laughter. So here brimming over means to be full of something. So this boy was full of excitement and laughter. Clear? Okay. Come, child, come, called his parents, as he lagged behind, fascinated by the toys in the shop that lined the way. This child was attracted by the toys which were displayed at the various stalls. Now, as he would be left behind, his parents had to keep on calling him again and again. So, here these words that we see here is, there's a word called lagged behind. Lagged behind means was left behind. Fascinated means he was attracted to the toys that were displayed in the shop. Lined the way, that means they were displayed, the way these toys were displayed, it attracted the child so much that he happened to be left behind and his parents had to keep on waiting for him after some time. Clear? Okay. He hurried towards his parents, his feet obedient to their calls, his eyes still lingering on the receding toys. As he came to where they had stopped to wait for him, he could not suppress the desire of his heart, even though he knew well the old cold stare of refusal in their eyes. Now the child was obedient and would walk towards his parents on being called, but his eyes just would keep on looking at the toys that he wanted. Now as he reached them, he just couldn't control his desire to buy the toys. So he although he was very familiar with the reaction that they would give once he would demand for something, and he knew that they would stare at him, indicate that stare itself was an indication of denial, but still the child knew the emotionless way in which they would stare at him, but still he always looked at them with an appeal that please give me this or give me that, kind of a look. Okay, so here too there are some words. See this word lingering, that means His eyes still was lasting for a long time. That means his legs were actually moving forward, but his eyes seemed to be stuck to the toys displayed in the shop. Receding means left behind. Suppress means put an end to, or maybe remove it. Okay. Then this cold stare means emotionless, without any feeling, kind of a stare. Clear? Okay. I want the toys, he pleaded. Now the child was unable to control his desire any longer. He said that he wanted to buy the toys. His father looked at him red-eyed in his familiar tyrant way. Now, tyrant means a cruel and oppressive kind of a look. So his father gave him a very cruel kind of a look, a very angry kind of a look. His mother, melted by the free spirit of the day, was tender and giving him her finger to hold and said, "Look, child, what is before you?" Now, his mother did not give him a kind of a cold look. The mother became emotional due to the cheerful mood. Lovingly, she gave her finger to the child to hold and to guide him to the place, and she asked him to see what was in front of him. Here, this word melted by the free spirit means the mother was very tender, very loving. Clear? It was a flowering mustard field, pale like melting gold, as it swept across miles and miles of every land. A group of dragonflies were bursting about on their gaudy purple wings, intercepting the flight of a lone black bee or butterfly in search of sweetness from the flowers. The child followed them in the air with his gaze, till one of them would still its wings and rest, and he would try to catch it. But it would go fluttering, flapping into the air. When he had almost caught it in his hands, then his mother gave a cautionary call. "Come, child, come on to the footpath." Now, there was a vast field full of bright yellow-colored mustard flowers, and they seemed like flowering streams of gold and were widespread. A group of dragonflies, black bees, and butterflies buzzed around, sucking the nectar from the flower. The child looked at them, and as they flew around, one of them sat somewhere, and the child, getting attracted to these flying creatures, tried to catch them. And these little creatures were flying from one place to the other. Now, noticing this, the mother called out to the child as they started walking down the footpath. So the mother requested him to come on to the footpath. Clear? Then he ran towards his parents gaily and walked abreast of them for a while, being, however, soon left behind, attracted by the little insects and worms along the footpath that were teeming out from their hiding place to enjoy the sunshine. Okay, now there are some words that you need to understand here. See this word teeming, then this word abreast. Abreast means side by side, facing the same way. So he ran towards his parents very happily and walked side by side for some time, but again soon he was left behind, because this time he was attracted by some insect and some worms that he saw on the footpath. So teeming out, again, that word teeming out, it means they were coming out or pouring out or emptying out from their hiding place to enjoy the sunshine. So the child ran towards his parents. He walked next to them, but after a few steps he stopped to see the insects who were coming out of their soil. Once again the child was left behind. Clear? "Come, child, come," his parents called from the shade of a grove where they had seated themselves on the edge of a well. He ran towards them. A shower of young flowers fell upon the child as he entered the grove, and forgetting his parents, he began to gather the raining petals in his hands. But lo, he heard the cooing of the doves and ran towards his parents, shouting, "The dove, the dove!" The raining petals dropped from his forgotten hands. Now the parents called him. They sat next to the well under the shady tree. The child once again ran and joined his parents. Okay. Now, as the child entered the shady forest area, he was welcomed by a shower of flowers. He forgot his parents and started collecting the petals that had fallen. And as he was doing that, he heard the cooing of the dove, and suddenly his attraction, which was for a second ago or a while ago was on the flowers that he was, or the flower petals that he was collecting, it got diverted, and now his attention was towards the cooing of the doves. He started chasing the birds, and in this process the petals that he had collected in his hands fell down. Now this indicates what? This indicates that the attention period of a child is very, very less. Okay, so a child cannot pay attention, or cannot get attracted, or cannot stay in one place for a long time. This is the nature of a child. So the moment something else attracts the child's attention just gets diverted, and he forgets about what he was attracted to a moment earlier and gets attracted to a new thing, okay, which is actually more attractive and more inclined. He becomes more inclined towards it. Clear? "Come, child, come," they called to the child, who had now gone running into wild capers round the banyan tree, and gathering him up, they took the narrow, winding footpath which led to the fair through the mustard field. Now, capers means playful skipping movement. Okay, so what was happening was the parents called the child who was running and playing around a banyan tree, and they lifted him and walked down the narrow twisting lane through which they crossed the mustard field and reached the fair. Clear? Anand. As they neared the village, the child could see many other footpaths full of throngs converging to the whirlpool of the fair, and felt at once repelled and fascinated by the confusion of the world he was entering. Now, as they were about to reach the fair, the child saw a huge crowd of people walking from all directions. So this word throngs means huge crowd, okay, and converging, that means they were gathering, they were all coming from different direction to this particular point, the fair. So as they were about to reach the fair, the child saw this huge crowd, all of them walking from different direction towards the fair. Now the dense crowd scared him, and he stepped back for a while, but the next moment he got attracted to such a huge crowd entering into the fair. So he was somewhere attracted to the mind-boggling crowd of humanity. Clear? A sweetmeat seller hawked gulab jamun, rasgulla, barfi, jalebi at the corner of the entrance, and a crowd pressed round his counter at the foot of an architecture of many-colored sweets decorated with leaves of silver and gold. The child stared open-eyed, and his mouth watered for the barfi that was his favorite sweet. "I want that barfi," he slowly murmured, but he half knew as he begged that his plea would not be heeded, because his parents would say he was greedy. So without waiting for an answer, he moved on. Now, as they entered the fair, the child could see that in one corner there was a sweetmeat seller, and this shop that the seller had various kinds of sweets displayed, like gulab jamun, rasgulla, barfi, jalebi, and they were displayed at various heights and were covered with falls of gold and silver. Now the little boy's mouth watered when he sighted his favorite barfi, and so he expressed his desire to get one in a very low voice, because he knew that his request would be rejected by his parents, and so he did not expect his desire or his wish to be fulfilled, and so he decided that he would walk further, because he knew somewhere or the other that his parents would say that he was greedy for a barfi, and they would deny offering him the barfi, and so he decided that okay, it's pointless waiting for an answer, better I start going further. Clear? A flower seller hawked a garland of gulmohar. The child seemed irresistibly drawn. He went towards the basket where the flowers lay heaped and half murmured, "I want that garland." But he well knew his parents would refuse to buy him those flowers, because they would say that they were cheap. So without waiting for an answer, he moved on. So At the entrance of the fair, again, like after the sweets seller, the child could actually see a flower seller. Okay, it was the next stall, and this seller was actually selling garlands of Gulmohar flowers. So the child wanted the garlands too, so he walked towards the basket of the flowers and again announced his desire that he wanted to have these flowers. But the way he announced his desire was in a very low tone, a very low voice. Now, the child, before the parents could utter anything, the child already knew that they would surely refuse to buy him the flowers, as they would say that they were cheap. So again, without waiting for an answer, the boy walked ahead without expecting some reply from his parents. Clear? A man stood holding a pole with yellow, red, green and purple balloons flying from it. The child was simply carried away by the rainbow glory of their silken colors, and he was filled with an overwhelming desire to possess them all. But he well knew his parents would never buy him the balloons, because they would say he was too old to play with such toys. So he walked further. Okay? Now, the next thing that the child came across was a balloon seller selling balloons of different colors of rainbows. The boy was attracted to the shining colors of the balloon and wanted to have them all. He also knew that his parents won't buy him the balloon because they would have their own reasons. They could say that he was too old to play with balloons now. So the child walked on further. Okay? A snake charmer stood playing a flute to a snake which coiled itself in a basket, its head raised in a graceful bend like the neck of a swan, while the music stole into its invisible ears like the gentle riffling of an invisible waterfall. The child went towards the snake charmer, but knowing his parents had forbidden him to hear such coarse music as the snake charmer played, he proceeded further. Okay, now the next place where he paused was a snake charmer who was playing a flute, and the snake was twisting its neck to the music. Now the snake had coiled itself with a basket and had raised its head out. It bent and moved its neck gracefully like a swan. Now it seemed that the music of the flute was heard by the snake's invisible ears, and that actually created the effect of waterfalls on it. And because of it, it swayed its neck in a similar way. Now the boy walked towards the snake charmer, but as his parents had warned him to remain away from unpleasant music, especially the kind of music that a snake charmer would play. It's not a very pleasant music, a very rough kind of music. He realized that his parents may not like him hearing this kind of a music, and so he proceeded further. There was a roundabout in full swing. Men, women, and children, carried away in a whirling motion, shrieked and cried with dizzy laughter. The child watched them intently, and then he made a bold request. "I want to go on the roundabout. Please, father, mother." See, then he saw the roundabout swing. It was full of men, women, and children who were enjoying the ride. The boy watched the people on the roundabout, and then he gathered up enough courage to express his utmost desire to go on the roundabout. And so this time, not in a low voice, but with a bold manner, okay, a little louder than how he had made his previous request, he told his parents, his mother and father, that he wanted to go on the roundabout. Clear? Reply. He turned to look at his parents. They were not there. Ahead of him, he turned to look on either side. They were not there. He looked behind. There was no sign of them. A full deep cry rose within his dry throat, and with a sudden jerk of his body, he ran from where he stood, crying in real fear, "Mother, father!" Tears rolled down from his eyes, hot and fierce. His flushed face was convulsed with fear. Panic-stricken, he ran to one side first, then to the other, hither and thither in all directions, knowing not where to go. "Mother, father!" he wailed. His yellow turban came untied. and his clothes became muddy. Now, when his parents did not reply, he turned towards them and he could see them nowhere around. He looked around behind, but his parents were nowhere to be seen. Now, the boy started crying loudly. His whole body jerked and he ran here and there calling out for his parents. He was full of fear and tears started rolling down his cheeks as he cried and wailed and ran about from one place to the other. His turban opened and his clothes became muddy because he was falling here and falling there, and because of that his clothes were very, very dirty. Having run to and fro in a rage of running for a while, he stood defeated, his cries suppressed into sobs. At little distances on the green grass, he could see, through his filmy eyes, men and women talking. He tried to look intently among the patches of the bright yellow clothes, but there was no sign of his father and mother among these people, who seemed to laugh and talk just for the sake of laughing and talking. Now, after some time, he gave up because he was crying and running from one place to the other. So he became tired. The loud cries turned into mild sobs. He saw some people standing and talking and tried to find out if they were his parents. Now, the laughter and the talks of the people were meaningless for the child. He was simply searching for his parents. Okay. Now, we need to understand here that earlier also he could hear many people talking and laughing, but it really did not matter to him much. But now when he looked at all these people laughing and talking among themselves, he just found everything meaningless. The only thing that was really very important for him was finding his parents. Clear? He ran quickly this time to a shrine to which people seemed to be crowding. Every little inch of space here was congested with men, but he ran through people's legs, his little sobs lingering. Mother, father. Near the entrance to the temple, however, the crowd became very thick. Men jostled each other, heavy men with flashing, murderous eyes and hefty shoulders. The poor child struggled to thrust a way between their feet, but knocked to and fro by their brutal movements, he might have been tramped underfoot, had he not shrieked at the highest pitch of his voice, "Father! Mother!" A man in the surging crowd heard his cry and, stooping with great difficulty, lifted him up his arms. Now, what happened was the boy ran towards a temple which was crowded with people. He ran through the legs of men calling out for his parents. The crowd was pushing each other as he neared the entrance of the temple. Now the boy got scared of this huge strong men who were staring with murderous eyes, and they pushed with their strong big shoulders. The boy could have been crushed under the feet of these men had he not cried out for his mother and father. And the moment his cry was audible to a man in a crowd, this man lifted the child. Clear? "How did you get here, child? Whose baby are you?" the man asked as he steered clear of the mass. The child wept more bitterly than ever now and only cried, "I want my mother, I want my father." Then the man tried to soothe him by taking him to the roundabout. "Will you have a ride on the horse?" he gently asked. As he approached the ring, the child's throat tore into 1,000 shrill sobs, and he only shouted, "I want my mother, I want my father." Now, as the man got the child out of the crowd, he asked him how he had reached there and what were his parents' name. Now, the boy did not know, and he was not in a position to say something about his parents, and he cried even more. And repeatedly, he just wanted to go to his parents. Now, the man tried to relax the child by taking him to the roundabout and offering him a ride there, but the child screamed and wept loudly that he did not want any ride, but he only wanted his parents. Clear? The man headed towards the place where the snake charmer still played on the flute to the swaying cobra. "Listening to that nice music, child. Listen to the nice music, child," he pleaded. The child shut his ears with his fingers and shouted his double-pitched strain, "I want my mother, I want my father." The man took him near the balloon, thinking the bright colors of the balloon would distract the child's attention and quieten him. Would you like a rainbow-colored balloon? He persuasively asked. The child turned his eyes from the flying balloon and just sobbed. I want my mother. I want my father. Now, this man started walking back to this on the same route which the child had taken. So he took the child to the snake charmer. He asked him if he wanted to listen to this nice music played by the snake charmer, and the child immediately shut his ears with his fingers, screaming loudly that he wanted only his parents. Next, the man took him to this man who was selling balloons, hoping that he might get the child cheered up by giving him some balloons. But the child here too did not want anything else other than his parents. Okay. The man, still trying to make the child happy, bore him to the gate where the flower seller sat. Look, can you smell those nice flowers, child? Would you like a garland to put around your neck? Now, again, the man tried to make the child happy and took him to this flower seller, and he asked him to smell the fragrance of the flower and offered him a garland. The child turned his nose away from the basket and reiterated his sob. I want my mother, I want my father. The child just refused to smell the flowers that he wanted to buy earlier, because now his priority was only his parents. Thinking to humor his disconsolated charge by a gift of sweets, the man took him to the counter of the sweet shop. What sweets would you like, child? He asked. The child turned his face from the sweet shop and only sobbed. I want my mother, I want my father. Now, finally the man took him to the sweetmeat seller and offered to buy sweets for him. Still the child did not want his favorite sweet, but the only thing that he wanted was his parents. Now, here there is one thing that we need to understand. You see, the stranger tried to quieten the child by offering him a lot of things, but earlier the child wanted a lot of other things, and he was maybe even annoyed on his parents because they were not giving him whatever he wanted. But later on, when the stranger wanted to give him everything that he desired earlier, he did not want it, because then his priorities changed. He did not want anything, but he only wanted his parents. Okay, so the gist of the whole story is this, that the child got lost, and earlier what he thought was more important for him, after losing his parents, he realized that those things were meaningless without his parents' presence in his life, and so his priorities changed, and so he did not want anyone else other than his parents in his life. Clear?